All right. Well, I think we can get started. We'll do some introductions so nobody misses anything. If you're just a few minutes late, it's okay. So let's get started. First of all, thank you for coming, for joining us today, and welcome. Um, I'm very, very excited to have this webinar. So before we get started, you probably saw when you joined that this webinar is being recorded. So that's the number one question. So the webinar is being recorded and we're going to share it with you after the webinar so you can access it on demand. So if you have a colleague who can't make it or anything, or if you have to drop off early, don't worry, we got you. This is also a good time to check your audio settings, make sure that you can hear me. And remember that we can't hear you. However, as you can see from me reading out the chat, we do encourage you to submit questions in the Q&A section below. So the chat is great. The Q&A section, if you hover on your screen, you'll see a Q&A. That's where I will be taking questions for our panel discussion at the end. And we are absolutely going to leave time to go over some of the most asked questions. The chat is great. Enjoy talking to each other. There are some representatives from Guesty and from PriceLabs in the chat. So hopefully questions will get answered there too. But if you want any questions answered live, put them in the Q&A section. Okay, so this is what we're going to go through today. I'm going to introduce our speakers. And then we are going to start with some insights on dynamic pricing from the perspective of a property management software. And then we'll go deeper into pricing insights and look at market data. And we'll learn practical implementation tips for 2026. After all that, like I said, we're going to have plenty of time for a panel discussion to answer your questions. And I think that's the part that we're all very excited about the most. So I'm Nama. I'm the community manager at Guesty. I talk to hosts every day. I talk to a lot of you, and I know that this is one topic that feels very overwhelming. So I'm really, really stoked to have these specific, exciting speakers join me today. They are truly, truly experts. And I'll start with my colleague, Jeff, who, in addition to being an expert on pricing strategies at Guesty, he is also a successful STR owner in his own right. I'm really excited to have Kyle with us today. Kyle is a senior solutions. Hey, Kyle. Kyle is a senior solution consultant at PriceLabs. He helps property managers with portfolios of all sizes, and really, just from briefly getting to know Kyle, really, really brings a wealth of knowledge and experience on pricing and revenue. And finally, we will be joined by Sean, who is a true pioneer in the short-term rental industry. Sean, too, helps hosts from all over the world build successful STR businesses. And he's going to go into some of the practical implementations. All right. Okay, so before we dive into today's topic, I wanted to take a minute to introduce Guesty to those of you who are not yet familiar with what we do. Most of you probably are, but there's always new faces. So Guesty is the leading property management software for short-term rentals, providing hosts and property managers like yourselves the most comprehensive and streamlined set of tools that you need to operate more efficiently, create excellent guest experiences, of course, bring in more bookings, and ultimately grow your business and revenue. So whether you are just getting started or if you are a full-time professional property management company that is looking to scale, as you can see, Guesty offers a solution that is suited to your business and its needs. All right, I think that's enough for me at this point. So Jeff, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Nama. So I'm Jeff. I'm the Price Optimizer Program Manager here at Guesty. Like she mentioned, I'm also a business owner. I've been in the vacation rental industry here in San Diego for about 14 years. And even before I joined Guesty, I chose Guesty as my platform of choice. So what I'll kind of walk you through is kind of how we talk about revenue management here within Guesty, and then how that would apply through dynamic pricing and into what Kyle and Sean will be talking about as well. Now we can go to the next slide. Oh, maybe one back. Oh, okay, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so at Guesty, how we like to think about revenue management is in the form of a pyramid. So a capable revenue management system will provide you as property managers with the tools to fine-tune your strategies, optimize pricing, and outperform their business and homeowner goals. So here at Guesty, as I mentioned, we like to think of this as a pyramid. It consists of three different layers and allows you to decide how deep you want to dive into each layer. So on the screen, you can see just a simplified version of this. And just through hundreds of hours of work here at Guesty with our partners and internally, this is what we've come up with. The three layers starting at the bottom. The first one is the base layer. It's the most important layer. It's the one you're going to work with daily, and that's where a dynamic pricing solution would live. You're going to be updating and maximizing your calendar, your revenue, your occupancy, and that's kind of what a lot of this today's presentation is going to focus on. The second layer are going to be rate plans, which we call them in Guesty. This is where we can help increase conversion by offering multiple booking options, such as different cancellation policies, non-refundable cancellation policies. It's a way to kind of expand your visibility and offer the guests different ways to book your property. The third and the top layer would be for promotion. This is where you can create an edge over your competition, targeting a specific audience, increasing your visibility in search results with things like early bird check-in discounts, length of stay check-in discounts, last minute, long-term stays, etc. So that's where we can kind of put the cap on things and outperform our competition. Okay. So dynamic pricing, within Guesty, you can connect to multiple different dynamic pricing tools, and one of the main ones here being PriceLabs. And just looking at our internal numbers, I wanted to discuss kind of what's happened in 2024 and what happened in 2025 and where things are going into the future. So internally, 53% of our accounts and 51% of our listings in 2024 were using some form of dynamic pricing. They're not just setting the rates manually, they're using some sort of dynamic pricing tool to assist them. How that stacked up here in December of 2025, while the number of accounts, percentage of accounts was flat at 53%, we did see a big increase of 20% year over year in the number of listings. So what does that tell us? Basically, what that tells us is professional or larger property managers are using dynamic pricing more frequently. They're attracting more listings to their portfolio, and they're able to optimize and perhaps outperform the competition within each of your markets, right? So the more listings you start seeing within your market, and most of those might be going to larger property managers, they will be using dynamic pricing. So if they have a leg up on whether it just be automation or event detection or adjusting via occupancy, it's something that you should all start thinking about using as well as becomes more and more of the industry standard. Okay. Lastly, one thing that we've really noticed is, guests that we speak with at Guesty who use some form of dynamic pricing, on average, they save about 2.5 hours per week. Now, how does that happen? It's all from, if you've ever used or seen one of the dynamic pricing tools, it will do a lot of the work for you, a lot of the heavy lifting, building your seasonality, adjusting for your day of the week adjustments, right? Is a Saturday more valuable than a Tuesday? In most markets, it is. Detecting local events. What's a high demand date versus a low demand date? Building your custom minimum night stay rules and allowing the tool to automate that so you don't have to manually set them. A lot of this is done via automation, but you can also supplement that by building and tweaking your strategies using any of these dynamic pricing tools to do, again, a lot of that heavy lifting. So that's where we can see a lot of this come into play. If you are manually building rates, if you're manually doing research, whether into your market, into your direct competitors, that's another thing that's built into these dynamic pricing tools. So simplifying all that allows you to do research quickly, make adjustments quickly, and a lot of that is already built for you via the automation.
Thank you, Jeff. Um, I think it's interesting because you were saying that, or you were suggesting that hosts are using dynamic pricing as a competitive advantage more and more, right? It's becoming a must. I think we can all agree, and it's going to be interesting to see how, in the future, probably a near future, where everyone is using dynamic pricing one way or another. It's going to be interesting to see how we can take that competitive advantage to the next level, right?
Yeah, I think the keyword, the hot keyword is AI. Well,
Yeah.
these tools have been using AI for years. So if you want to start using AI, this is a great segue to do that using some sort of dynamic pricing tool.
Right, right, for sure. All right, cool. So great segue into Kyle. I know you're going to talk about that as well, but you're going to share some really interesting insights with us that are going to help us going into 2026. So I'm going to stop
Absolutely.
sharing my screen so that you can share yours.
I will take over. Hey, Michael, I see you down there. All right, give me 1 second to share my screen and we will get going. Present this up real quick. Okay. All right. So, first things first, thank you all so much for having me here. Anybody that knows me or has seen me around knows I'm a big proponent of Guesty. I've been on a couple of road shows with them. I think it's one of the most elite property management systems that you're going to be able to find. So, starting off with that, thanks for having me, Guesty. But I do want to introduce myself. I'm Kyle Driscoll. I'm a senior solutions consultant with PriceLabs. I've been with the company for about 3 years now. Prior to that, I was a customer. Um, I worked for a very large property management system that was doing everything pretty much manually, working out of spreadsheets. And we eventually ended up getting to where we tested out the dynamic pricing softwares, tried all of them, and ultimately ended up finding that PriceLabs was by far the most beneficial to what I was trying to pull off. I got to where I was working around 700 units at a time across multiple different markets, and PriceLabs helped me really, really focus in on each of those individually. So, with that said, that's all I'm doing on the sales side of the dynamic pricing part of it. But what I'm going to be sharing today is market level occupancy data and its demand signals. And all of this is going to be aggregated across the markets that I mentioned. It's going to be directional, and it's meant to help the operators understand how demand is shifting, and it's not customer specific data. So nothing that I'm showing is directly from PriceLabs customers, and it's not by any stretch a pricing strategy by itself. With that said, from my experience working with everybody that's either a host that just has one property, or even with property managers that are extremely savvy, they manage thousands of listings. The one thing that I've found that is very, very clear to me is that the operators who perform the best aren't necessarily the ones that are always chasing that perfect data point. They're the ones who reduce the friction between what they're able to analyze and then actually getting it implemented. So think of it kind of simply as saying, like, how do I turn these insights into repeatable decisions and take some of that manual legwork out of the way for it. Now, why would you want to choose dynamic pricing from a revenue standpoint? I think the easiest way I can say it is dynamic pricing helps you optimize so that you can really take advantage of demand shifts. Now, this isn't just going to be when prices spike, when we need to when we need to raise rates. This is also going to be when the demand is behind last year and we need to identify that our rates need to come down a little bit earlier. That's one side that's not talked about with dynamic pricing enough, I don't think about. I think we talk about the high end and getting those really, really great bookings, but we don't talk about being able to get down quicker when we need to. And that's something that's really hard to do when you are doing things manually and when you have very fixed pricing. When we're talking about dynamic pricing with occupancy, the main thing that we can see is that it's going to optimize how we're chasing occupancy. So during peak season, we'll go for higher rates and still try to get occupancy. During lower seasons, your rates will automatically be lower for you. That way you can go ahead and start trying to take occupancy. If the occupancy is only going to be about 25% in your market, dynamic pricing tools will help you try to achieve, those 40, 50, 60% occupancy internally so that you really take a big portion of the market share. The one other side of dynamic pricing outside of competition, which you can see on here, dynamic pricing tools offer you the ability to go in and really analyze your competition very quickly. You don't have to bounce back and forth between, multiple different services and multiple different data platforms. These tools have this information available for you, but the time is the number one savings that I've always found. Now, if you're a host, you've got one property, you've got a decent amount of time, but if you start growing and as you start scaling, you're going to need more time. And that's where PriceLabs and these dynamic pricing tools really help out because we're automating a lot of this legwork for you, helping get you in line. But ultimately, we're not ever going to suggest that, hey, just set it and forget it and don't ever look at this tool. We want you to be in there and kind of understanding it, moving things around as well. Now, to successfully do that, you kind of have to be able to interpret some market trends. And what I want to focus on now is going to be how supply changes and how this impacts you. So, and again, we had a great audience. We had people from pretty much all over. We saw Qatar, we saw um, I think we saw South Africa. There's pretty much everybody. But up here, what I've got for you is based at the country level, what we're seeing with listing counts. So for the United States, we can see from November 2024 to the end of November of 2025, we saw almost a 4% increase in listings. Now, obviously, we need to pay attention to the micro markets that we're in. What happens broadly in the US isn't huge to us. It's more important if I'm down in Santa Rosa Beach, what's increasing in Santa Rosa Beach? I'm personally in Knoxville, Tennessee. You'll see here in a second that I'm going to geek out on some Tennessee football numbers, but it's important to know that these are trends that are happening. And for the most part, in the United States, you're seeing supply increase. There's some other areas where you're not. So we can see Spain, there's a massive decrease in the total available listings. A lot of that has to do with regulations. It's good to know this type of information, though, and all of this is available for you inside of these dynamic pricing tools. Now, this the one that we're looking at right now. This is going to be your pacing, and pacing is how has occupancy changed over the year. And it's not listed up here, but this is specifically for January, February, and March of this year. So what we're seeing as of right now for January, February, and March of 2026, broadly across the United States, occupancy is down. We're seeing things kind of level out, so to speak. We saw in the comments, somebody said that they were in warm Colorado. I feel for you, and anybody that's in the Colorado ski markets right now understands that your occupancy numbers for January through March are probably significantly less than this right now. Weather and things like that play into it, but it's good to know what's happening. And again, you want to pay attention hyper locally. Even though we're presenting data right here that's countrywide, this is good to let you see that it's not something that is just United States based. You know, you'll hear people talk about, the economy and tariffs and all these things may be playing into it, but this is something that we're seeing across the board. There's a lot of standardization, there's a lot of stabilization, and we're seeing demand kind of follow along those same trends. I promise I'm not going to be too wordy with this, but this is really, really important to see. And the main thing I want to point out to you is the blue line. That blue line is the static pricing. That means you're not getting in there and changing your pricing. Maybe you go in once a month and you update it from 500 to 450 or something like that. On average, over the last 12 months, they only get about 44% occupancy. And you can see even during peak time, hopefully you all are able to see my little indicator. Even during peak time, they're not really getting up to those levels of occupancy that they should be. Now, I'm not going to sit here and suggest like, hey, we need to go fully automatic pricing and really dial these systems in, but you need to at least start working towards that. Now, this is not just PriceLabs that we're seeing here. So when it says fully dynamic, that includes all the dynamic pricing providers. But you can see even by having low and limited dynamic pricing, maybe you're just going in and filling your gaps. Maybe you're going in and just working on certain seasons. You are gaining a lot in the market. And I'm just presenting occupancy here because ADR, again, it's going to be very market specific. But if you are if you are adjusting and picking up on demand trends quickly, you're also going to be able to help that ADR rise as well. Now, I've got a couple of actual instances here, and this first one is going to be for Austin, Texas, and they have an F1 Formula One event coming up. And what I want us to look at here is how PriceLabs is seeing this demand. So if you haven't been in PriceLabs, these graphs may not look super familiar to you or anything like that. But basically what we're looking at right here is this red line is where the occupancy is at right now for that particular date range. And the gray line up here is where the market finished last year. Now, and this is where we had a bump last year. So this is where the F1 event was last year. This is where it's at this year. So we want to make sure that the rates are responding correctly. And as you can see, we've got almost 30% occupancy here, and the rates are correctly jumping with that. Now, this is where the F1 event was last year. So if you were on static pricing and you were trying to match your historical pricing, you could potentially end up being too high during that period. So here's one example of PriceLabs in particular being able to help identify an event and help you raise your raise your pricing, and then hopefully capitalize on that increased demand there. The next one I'm going to show you real quick is the Cannes Lions Film Festival. And this is another one of those where things have moved, but I really like this view as well because we're looking specifically at this area, but I want to be able to define kind of what's happening with the rates. So we see a spike there, see a spike here, see a big spike here, and then a couple of them right here as well. Those all correlate to where market demand is shifting and increasing for us. So as we can see right here, this gray line, that's where the Festival was last year. Again, if we were using static pricing or relying solely on our historical, my rates would be really high right there, and I'd probably miss a booking. But because I'm picking up on the actual demand signals now with PriceLabs, you can see that we're able to capitalize on that increased demand. Now, when these events are announced really far out, PriceLabs and your dynamic pricing tools have a lot of mechanisms in there. Ours in particular is called far out pricing, which that helps you helps prevent you from being the first person booked. So think of it as when you're really far away, algorithms should be bumping your rates up slightly to protect you, just in case something gets announced. And in these situations, you're able to capitalize on the increased demand, make some extra money as well. I want to hint at these as well. I don't have the events listed up here, but as you can see, that red line's just a little bit on top of the gray line. What that means is we're pacing ahead this year. Occupancy is about 5% ahead. So we have a little bit of a spike up there for your rates. Same with here, just a little bit of an increase in occupancy. That means that we're going to have an increase on your rates as well. And these will normalize as you get closer to those dates. The algorithms are going to work for you to try to get you the best price each day. Then the last one, and this is where I get to geek out and have a lot of fun, and I promise I won't spend too much time here. But again, I mentioned I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee. If you are in the United States, you probably know how important the American football, particularly college football, is to markets like this. If you're not from the US, the best way I can say it is my city is filled with a bunch of people that love football at the university level, and we pay a lot of money for it. Now, the schedules change year over year, just like with any sporting event. And it's important to understand that if you're not addressing this, if you're not able to pick up on these, you're going to be booked at a much lower rate than what you would want to. Now, as a quick example, we've got this whole area squared away. This is the football season. And what I want to point out real quick is not these red lines yet, but these little gray lines. So we've got a dot here, a dot here, and a dot here. That was the demand signal last year. A little bit of context here, and context is always important when you're using pricing tools. A little bit of context. The schedule got released later last year than it did this year. The conference that they're a part of, they released it ahead of time. So PriceLabs had gone in, and we're protecting you ahead of time anyways. You're for those college football things until the schedules are released. We keep rates kind of high for you. But this is where the big home games were last year. We only had 3 big home games. There wasn't a ton of demand. Well, this year, we have the University of Texas coming to Neyland Stadium for the very first time. That's that big spike right here. And if we correlate that over, The market's already at almost 50% booked for this event that is literally 9 months from now. So if you're using a dynamic pricing tool and you have it set up correctly, you're going to be one of those people that's sitting there. Maybe you're not booked right now. You don't want to be the low hanging fruit that's booked off first, but your rates are going to be stabilized. So when people are planning this out, you're going to be able to capitalize as that demand is still increasing and supply is starting to decrease. Thus, you'll be able to achieve a higher rate. Now, kind of the same thing we see. This is Texas, lots of people coming in here. Auburn's right here. Alabama's right here. Unfortunately, University of Kentucky's right here. It's not quite the same bump. And then we've got LSU coming as well. All of these have different demand signals. And as you can see, they have similar pricing, but they are very, very specific to what they are. And you can also see for these other weekends that these dynamic pricing tools are not overinflating the incorrect weekends. They're targeting the correct weekends there for you. So again, don't want to spend too much time focusing on this, but really the key insights that I want you to get out of this are: one, it's going to be about precision. We're still going to be able to do A/B testing and tinkering and things like that, but ultimately we're going to be able to really benefit our revenue more so by getting rates in line on time and not so much chasing occupancy this year. Previous years, we've been able to get plenty of occupancy, post COVID, all that good stuff. But this is kind of a big change for us. We're getting to a point now where dynamic pricing is going to be close to a requirement as well. So just something to ponder on. But yeah, I've got pretty much everything covered for myself, and then I think we can pass it on off if you're ready. Stop my share, and then we will go off to Mr. Sean.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. Thanks, Kyle. First of all, unintentionally or maybe a little intentionally, but I think you started like a college football um, war in the comments.
Let's go. Let's go, people. People talking bad about
So,
my Vols.
so that's always fun. But thank you. That was great. And I loved how calm and confident you just presented that. And just going into 2026, I feel like that's the energy that we all need. And perfect timing and a great segue for Sean. Hey Sean. So
Hey, how's it going?
it's going
Right.
great. It's
What's up,
going
guys?
great. Basically perfect timing. You did
Tap
well.
me in. They're like, Sean, let's go.
Yeah.
So very cool. Yeah, this is a fun event. So thanks for having me, guys. And I hope you guys have been happy. I'm actually not a college football fan, so maybe I saved myself the embarrassment because I know nothing about football. I guess all I do is Airbnb, so or short-term rentals. So
All you do.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's my world. So I'm sure we already did introductions and stuff, so thanks in advance. But
Yeah,
you
we
want me
did
to hit people with some
introductions.
you want
Go
me
for
to hit people with the slides, just jump right in?
Yes, absolutely. I said you were going to show some real world techniques and strategies. So let's get into it.
Cool, right on. Well, thanks for allowing me to share my screen also, guys. I'm going to do this through images because I'm not a PowerPoint presentation guy. So let me load some of these image cards up and I will see if Zoom has the functionality for these. So the way that I would like to present this is going to be right here. Okay. Share window. No, sure. Thanks. 1 second. Let's share the screen instead. You guys are going to see everything in my computer. So that's how screen shares work. So, okay, there we go.
I can
I
share
am,
for you as well if that's easier.
nope,
Oh,
it's
here
fine.
we
I've
go.
got it.
Perfect.
I'm just gonna do it like this, and we're gonna shuffle the deck like some cards here. So, um, card number one, we're just bring them up like this. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Sean Rakidzich. I'm a workaholic. I spend almost every single hour of my waking life in the short-term rental space. I've been doing this about 11 years. I was just assisting a guest with an emergency issue as we were starting this event, speaking of. So I do about $1 million or a little bit over $1 million a month in revenue. And I'm still super very hands-on in my business. I've just come to the belief that if you want your guests to have the best experience, you probably should stay close to the fire. So I'm in the mix. I don't just do pricing, but our portfolio has grown to a total of $1.3 million a month in revenue that I manage. And that's important for this event because it's hundreds of properties over multiple countries. And what I want to present to you today is kind of a conceptual reframe for any of you who are really trying to nail your prices. So when I manage my rates, what's the most important is we have the proper inputs for a rate campaign. And I have zero bias to where I get my information. I have zero loyalties, and I think this is something I think that both Guesty and PriceLabs they kind of agree with is the good data is good data. So the way that I bring in inputs into my company in order for us to make the right pricing decisions is we first go to Airbnb itself, which is one of the largest traffic OTAs out there, far from the only one, but they get a lot of data. And they allow you in the Airbnb platform to make a list as if you're a traveler called a wish list. Now, normally only travelers would use this, but if you make a wish list of all of your competition, you can get some of the most curated data that exists out there. So, for example, let's say you have a 4-bedroom house, but your 4-bedroom house has a really nice view, or has a hot tub and a pool, or has family-friendly amenities, or a combination of all therein, right? The thing that you can do is you can go into your neighborhood or into your city and take 20 listings that are the most like yours. And not just amenities, but even the amount of design budget that got spent, or even the style of design, where some listings might be very like, down tempo, just comfortable homes, and yours might be more loud and boutique. You can create a wish list that really reflects if a customer was going to pick between me or 10 other listings, who's my real competition if there were 10 tabs open on Airbnb and they had to pick one, right? That curated wish list allows us then to go in and look at the data later. Then PriceLabs has some sick data. If you go into the top of PriceLabs, which I think you guys have probably mentioned that you guys can connect for free, the calendar button is the first tab, and then the second tab is the neighborhood data tab. And the neighborhood data tab gives you your market data, your rates, but below that is an occupancy chart. And an occupancy chart day by day, how occupied your market's going to be, is like X-ray vision for a market. I could give you a 2-hour long TED talk on that one chart alone, but I really love that chart. And I overall love PriceLabs for the way that they visualize data. True story. It might be an overshare, but my portfolio that we have in the Northeast, we were using Wheelhouse for multiple years, and we just switched to PriceLabs because we needed better data visualization. So I just have to say best in class for that, guys. Good job. And then booking feedback data may be one of the most important bits of data that you can get. And what I mean to say with this is that when you get a booking, you know that your price was either correct or your price was too low because you got a booking. If you did not get a booking for a certain day, that just means your price is too high. Both the missed days rates and the days that you hit, which we call a hit rate, both of these are data that go back into our system that tells us how we should modify future prices. So when you have a Tuesday and your Tuesdays are $200 and your Tuesdays never get booked, you have a 0% hit rate for Tuesdays at 200. If you dropped your rates to 100, you got hit at 50%, you have half of your bookings on Tuesdays at $100 and the rest are empty, your average daily rate for Tuesday is $50. And so it's important for us to find that balance of high hit rate numbers and high revenue numbers, so that way altogether we get the best total end of year ADR per day. And that's an example of how we use the feedback data that we get from our bookings. Then deployment phase. When we deploy our rates, you deploy them multiple places. Now, I deploy into all three. This is a personal thing. This is how I do it. And this is not the only way to do it. You could throw dice if you wanted to, right? Everybody's got their own thing. So for pricing deployment, I personally will go to PriceLabs and I will use their calendar, the very first tab, and I will look for the darkest blue dates, and I will look for the runs. We call it a blue spell, where there's multiple blue dates in a row. And when you have multiple blue dates in a row, that informs you that there's high demand for an extended period of time. And then we will proactively go into those dates in the blue spells, and we will raise our minimum length of stay requirements for those. This is a very simplified version of what we're doing. But when there's 8 days in a row that are hyper high demand, you shouldn't maintain a 2-day length of stay is our camp. All right. And that's just what we think to be common sense of practice. I in Guesty will do my last minute automations because of the granularity of Guesty's is the service that they have, the Guesty GPO. Not to promote any specific software, but I have a preference for length of stay optimizations in PriceLabs. I have a preference for last minute discount optimization in Guesty. And then Airbnb, they have features in something called Pro Tools, and those features are only available to Airbnb. Now, a lot of channel managers allow you to create promotions that will affect these Airbnb widgets, but I will use promotions for booking.com and for like Expedia, but on Airbnb, I find it's much more intuitive to use Airbnb's rule sets and Pro Tools in the Airbnb platform. So I literally have 3 tabs open in my computer when I'm doing pricing. I have the Airbnb multi-calendar, I have my channel manager, and I have PriceLabs open, all 3 at the same time. And that's my pricing deployment little spread. Now, all of what I've just presented kind of very quickly, because I like rather do Q&A for this stuff too, because a lot of you guys have very unique situations. There are traps in the way that most people do their prices. This is something that I see every week. I coach every week with students. There's usually 2 camps that people have their traps with, right? One is some people believe that by using a pricing software that all their problems will go away. But just like our counterpart said in the very beginning of this webinar, is that the rate at which people have been growing their utilization of pricing software has grown. It's become the industry standard, essentially. In many most competitive markets, most everybody has a pricing software. What this does is this means that everybody in those markets who uses PriceLabs or anything like it, they no longer have an edge, but it is a requirement even to be able to play the game, because everybody else would then have an edge. It's like sitting at a poker table and being the only person who does not know how to play poker. That would be very dangerous for your wallet. So one pricing trap is softwares can do a lot of things. And it's important for us to do 2 things. We need to understand that software isn't a magic bullet like it used to be, but it's so much more important than it used to be. And it can do exactly what you want it to do. And what's the most important thing you all can do right now is to learn the ins and outs of pricing strategy, the basics, so that way you can tell your pricing software what to do. I think of PriceLabs like a piano. And the better you know how to play piano, the better you know how to play PriceLabs. One of the biggest traps, though, that I'm angling at here is something called herding, or this bandwagon effect. When everybody uses a pricing software and that pricing software goes up and it goes down based on supply and demand, that means everybody is going up and down based on supply and demand, right? It's like it's like a lot of what's the word? It's cooperative. Everybody who's in the software is cooperative. Nobody gets a specific edge against everybody else. It's just the fairness of the software. The software is not designed to give you a secret edge against somebody else who's on PriceLabs. PriceLabs isn't going to pick favorites. Everybody plays the same game. But what this does is, in times in your market when you have really, really low demand or really high demand, the market will move like kind of like a big ship steering through the ocean. It's going to move slowly. It's going to be clunky if everybody's moving in the same direction. So what we need to do is we need to know our markets more intimately, understand that everybody's going to move up or everybody's going to move down to a degree at a certain time in a certain way. And then we need to deviate and to play a little bit of game theory against the masses, which I call a level 2 deviation. We're going to let PriceLabs, Wheelhouse, GPO, everybody do their thing. And then based on the data that we have, we're going to say we can either get a little bit more money by playing a slightly different game in peak season, or we need to be much more proactive and we need to change our rates in slow season before the data gets any worse and everybody goes down even more. We need to be ahead of the curve. So you first learn pricing strategy to create a human thesis, to create a human belief system on what you think actually happens in your market, so that way you can navigate your ship or you can play your piano. And then you execute it through softwares. And like I said, I'm using 3 different tabs. And all of this is to understand that everything seeks equilibrium, supply and demand. Customers want the best rates, hosts want the most money. We're always at each other's throats in a way. And we need to understand that the game that we're playing is anytime that things are not going as usual, we need to make a human override to the software that is designed to be perfect outside of fast-moving, unexpected data. And that, my friends, is what is inside generally my brain as I make pricing deployments. And if any of you guys want to, oh, that was all screen shared, right? Yes, thank God. I was about to say if I screwed that up, I would ruin it. And thank you guys for listening. And of course, I've got like I could do video tours of the pieces of software if it comes to that, because I know that was much more conceptual, and I can show you guys inside of any of these softwares if you need.
Thank you so much, Sean. And
Yeah.
it's funny because we talked before about how AI and automation and using dynamic pricing tools is undeniably the future. And that's, you know, what's going to give you the competitive advantage. But there's another layer to that, which is like you said, if everyone is using, you know, dynamic pricing, then you still need that human touch, right? Which I think we all kind of want to hear as humans. Like, yes, AI is great, and we're going to use it, and we're going to be good at it, and it's going to help us. But like, we still have what to offer and what to bring to the table, and how to improve our own operations. So I like that. Thank you. All right,
Yeah.
we promised a panel discussion, and there are so many questions. We're not going to be able to get to all of them. I tried to take the ones that were the most repetitive, and also that would benefit everyone. So like the more specific questions, I don't know if we're going to have time to get to, although I see that some are getting answered. So that's great. Let's start with a question that comes up a lot. It came up here, and it comes up every time we talk to hosts, and specifically with the smaller hosts. So hosts who have, you know, 1 to 3 listings, who are just starting out, and they want to know, you know, what are the most common mistakes, or what are the things that are the easiest things to get wrong, you know, unintentionally, even when you're just getting started. So I'll pass it on to whoever. Jeff, you can
Yeah, I can start there. I think one thing that I see a lot in when we work with our partners here in Guesty and on revenue management is, well, this is what I did last year. This is what the listing booked last month. This is what the listing did last January. The market's dynamic. It's always going to shift. So while it's good to understand like the end result, how much revenue did you generate for this listing last year, last month, or the January last month? Like, we need to be dynamic. We need to be forward looking. The market's shifting. It's not gonna be the same last year. It's not gonna spring back. It might be up, it might be down. So being able to be flexible. And as Sean kind of mentioned, like, revenue management isn't just turning on a tool and letting it run. You have to understand what you're looking at and what options are available for you to perhaps outpace or outperform the market. So those are 2 big ones. I turned it on, it's not working, and this is what I did last year. Why am I not getting the same rates?
Thank you. Kyle, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think that hits it pretty well. I would say the other thing that I've found that's like, and I've worked with a lot of people that are on the smaller side and larger side. The one thing that I see is there's a lot of people that rely on their gut, that say like, hey, this is what I hear my neighbor's priced at. I should be making that. There's a lot of conjecture. I think sometimes people that have early success can feel really confident in that gut-based pricing. But really, like, just like we were saying, like Jeff was saying, markets change so fast that really, like, I think the operators that stabilize themselves fastest, they're the ones that kind of perform the best. The other mistake I see people like really make when they first start is they look at it and they're trying to get perfect pricing rather than get conversions, get 5-star bookings, get the ball rolling, and getting everything working. So to me, that's one thing that I always talk to customers about is like, hey, it's okay if if the first 5 bookings that come all within a month are lower rates, because you're going to get those 5-star bookings. Just don't let people book your high value dates at a low rate. So I think those are the 2 things that I would call out.
Amazing. Okay, Sean, hey,
I have a
want
thought.
to add to that? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I say feature bloat is one of the things we call it feature bloat. A lot of new people turn every setting on when they get PriceLabs, right?
Yep.
They turn every single one on. And the reason why I would object to this is when you first turn on a pricing software, you kind of want to ease into it and see how the market does without any things. Because PriceLabs works on its own, right? You just turn it on and prices will go up and down. But if you make every single setting active and aggressive, because you want max performance, right?
Yep.
Optimistic thing. You will find that when you don't get the bookings, you won't know what is wrong because all the features solve certain problems. And so we want to turn a software on without the bloat and then add the features in as we go. And that would be my thought.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, a bunch of different variations of this question. So we have people from small towns, we have people from, not beachfront in a place where everyone else is beachfront. But essentially, I think the question that everyone is asking is, does the value of dynamic pricing change within, if your location or your property is in a different location or in a remote location as opposed to a big city or is not beachfront in a place where everything else is beachfront? How does that play in? I'm going to pass it on to you.
Sure, let's go backwards this time. So
There we go.
I think dynamic pricing strategy, it's important, right? That's the first thing. It is just immensely important. And the way that it's important will change. So I have some students in Europe, Finland, Romania. No one changes their rates. Nobody, right? And that makes dynamic pricing the grandest opportunity. It's so wonderful. If nobody changes their rates in peak season and nobody raises their prices, then all of the best listings get booked immediately far in advance. Everybody, early birds, the good stuff, right? What this does is 3 months, 2 months before peak season hits, you could be the only nice property left because you decided not to give away the farm, right? And then now it's you versus all of the average properties that didn't get booked proactively, and you can set the rate that you like. So dynamic pricing allows you to take true advantage in peak season in a place where nobody raises the rates. Now, dynamic pricing becomes so much more important in a market where everybody optimizes. Because imagine you're the only person who does not change their rates, right? And then you're the person who accidentally gets booked proactively in peak season. You don't get that rate optimization. And then also, when you don't run a dynamic pricing strategy in a hyper competitive market, your winters or your slow seasons are empty, right? Because everybody else did the right thing. Everybody else knew what they had to do to get the bookings. And at the end of the year, a lot of like newer hosts who own their properties, they started the year with the sense of entitlement, like I will get $400 a night for my listing. I will never go lower than that. Slow season comes, and they see the most beautiful properties in their neighborhood go for 225. And they're like, how could these people drop their prices that low? That's not fair to me, they will say. They should stop lowering their prices so I can get my 400. And then they learn the hard way that dynamic pricing is a requirement. It is the most important thing. And beachfront property, if to get very specific, like that question asks, if you're on the water, then you can identify that your property has a unique bottleneck that people really, really do want. And then you can respond to peak demand in a different way than somebody who's just near the water, right? And that level of nuance comes after like a good couple, I would say a couple years. Maybe I shouldn't be discouraging. Some people might get this in just a few months. This might make sense to you already. But if you're an on the water property and that is truly unique, then how you deploy that hyper desirable amenity will change as opposed to somebody who's just got an average everyday property. And that's the final takeaway is if you do have an average property, then you do need to understand where you're at risk, because there's more supply than necessary most days of the week, because the way a market industry like this works is people put inventory into the market all year round to capture peak demand. But when there's not peak demand, there is then oversupply. So if you're an average host with an average non-beachfront property, not the most beautiful thing, being a master of price is probably the best thing that you can be.
Yeah, just real quickly on top of that, I mean, we're talking about dynamic pricing, but we're also talking about revenue management. If you're in a big city where you can upsell and charge early check-in, late checkout, grocery delivery, there's other streams of revenue here that we don't need to just flex our pricing this much. There's other ways that we could earn money. So revenue management versus dynamic pricing. Dynamic pricing is a piece of revenue management.
And on that, Jeff, you're kind of hinting at that ability with rate plans, and that's one of the things that is really, I'm going to toot Guesty's horn because I work with a lot of PMSs. That's not something that a lot of property management systems allow. That's functionality PriceLabs has to send to them, but a lot of property management systems don't allow those rate plans. So kudos to you guys for having those, because like you're saying, in the cities, you do have those abilities, that ability to upsell. And just real quick on the question, I would say that my answer to it would really be that the value definitely doesn't disappear. It just changes what it is we're looking at. When you're in cities, we're looking at high demand events and things like that. When you're in a much more rural area, we're looking at those demand dips and potential, booking window changes and things like that as well.
Yeah. So a lot of people are asking, well, first of all, it seems like we all agree on everything up until this point. So maybe with the last 5 minutes, we can have a question that maybe we'll disagree. Maybe there'll be some different opinions. That could be interesting. But yeah, there are a lot of questions about, like specific, we said beachfront, not beachfront, small city, whatever, but there's also a lot of questions about events. And, we're not all in these main cities that have big events. And there's also just the concept of that Sean talked about a little bit, but, just normal, traditional high season, low season, holidays, spring break, whatever it is, right? There's so much information, and this is why we're recording this. So if you can't catch all of it, rewatch it, take your time. You can watch it on either double speed or slow it down, whatever works for you. But let's try and give one, if there's only one thing that we can focus on, what is that? What do you recommend? We'll start
for 2026.
For 2026, yes.
I guess since Jeff started on one, Sean started one, I'll start.
Yeah, it's your turn.
I would say focus on, you really need to focus on the big picture. It's not about getting one booking that's great. You have to, especially if you're really, really prominent on Airbnb, you're a part of an algorithm game now. It's not just about having great pricing and great minimum stays and all that perfect. You really have to be dialed in all the way across the board. So I think Sean will probably hit on some of the stuff with his deployment strategies and all of that. But the one thing I would say, take advantage of the opportunity if you're in low season. Really go in and make sure that your listings are merchandised well, that you've reviewed your rates, you've reviewed everything. Be ready when that peak season comes. Don't wait until the last minute and start making those types of tweaks. Try to identify things now. See if you're missing photo content. See if your amenities are mischecked. Make sure your minimum lengths of stay are set up. Just make sure all those little things are taken care of. The little things are going to be extra important this year. If you're not doing those, it's going to be hard to generate maximum revenues.
Yeah.
Sean and Jeff, you're both on mute, but we only have a few minutes, so let's try and make this quick.
I'll go real quick.
Okay.
I'll turn it over to Sean. One thing that I talk about all the time when we have our revenue management meetings with our guest users is understanding ahead of time what's happening within your market. What's the market occupancy? What's the average ADR of your type of listing? And what did we do last year, right? How are we pacing? Is our listing on January 8th pacing ahead or behind where we were last year on January 8th? Now we can understand what's happening within the market. We can preview the occupancy within the market. And I want to look 2-3 months down the road. Because again, what we've all been talking about and Sean mentioned, it's not just relying on these tools, it's also being able to implement your own strategies to offset yourself from the market or what else is happening. So being able to understand, do I need to change my minimum night restrictions? Should I increase or decrease pricing to vary myself against the market? If we're going into our off season, maybe I want my prices to be lower because I'm trailing the revenue I was chasing last time, January 8th, this time last year. Are we ahead or behind? So understanding what's happening over the next 3 months and being able to adjust your strategies.
Sounds good. Sean.
We were supposed to disagree on this one, but I love you guys. You guys are good. Because the fact that Kyle said you have to do more than just change your prices. Are your photos good? Like, that's the one thing we do. I want to show you guys something too, because I do want to give you something novel. But All of our sites are catalog sites. People can look at 100 listings and then choose us. Why do they choose us? That's one thing we do want to understand. And merchandising your listing well, making sure that it looks good to get clicked is going to be one of the most important things you can do. I want you all to start looking at your data, and I do want to show a PriceLabs feature real quick, if that's okay, because I think it's something that everybody should see in 2026. Got permission to show it?
You do? We do have 1 minute left, so
Okay,
maybe
cool. Cool. I will be the most quick. So if you all go into PriceLabs, I want you all to know. I want you all to know. Can you see my screen?
It's showing as black on my screen right
showing
now.
black.
Okay, hold on. Let me fix it. Okay, because there is a chart, and I want to show it in 30 seconds or less. Okay. Share entire screen. There we go. So if you guys can see my screen now, PriceLabs has these charts, this occupancy chart here, and then these blue dashed lines and these green dashed lines are your future and past bookings. You can activate this even if you've never used PriceLabs before. It will pull all your data in. Go to chart options here and put your upcoming and last year's bookings. So you can see this black line is your price today, and this blue line and this green line are your prices that you have gotten bookings for. So in summary, I want you all to get so deep in your data that you can know everything. And the first data that we want to see is what is my price now in relation to my future and last year's bookings, and how can I build my rate plan to be relational to the incremental growth that I'm looking to achieve. Sometimes we have no GPS pin for where we are, and PriceLabs, you guys did a real good job with that. I just wanted people to know that specific thing, I use this. It's my North Star. It's huge.
I love neighborhood data. Thank you for saying that. I'm not one of the geniuses that's back there doing it, but it's made my life so easy working with a team like we've got at PriceLabs. Same with Guesty. I'm sure you all feel the same way. Like it's so nice having the data and the engineers that we have. So thanks for shouting that out. I'm sure they'll be happy to hear that.
Yeah, I would say if anything in 2026, you got to have your hands on some data.
Okay, so thank you. That was great. I'm sorry that we didn't have more time to answer questions. I have all the questions though, so we will try and get through as many as we can personally, one-on-one. But I think this was a great hour. It flew by. I can't believe it's already been an hour. Amazing. Everyone who came, you've been here for an hour. That's not a small thing, especially if you're if it's nighttime by you. So good for you. I just wanted to end by saying thank you. Thank you to everyone who came. Thank you to Kyle. Thank you to Jeff. Thank you to Sean. I'm sorry also, this wasn't intentional, but Sean is also here, and the way we're all sitting seems to be covering, but this was definitely a joint effort. And we really appreciate our partners at PriceLabs and Sean, of course. So thank you so much. I know we're getting all the thank yous in the chat. So I know this was very insightful for everyone. And like I said, I'll end with, you will get the recording. So don't worry about that. And this is a QR code to join our Facebook group. So it would be great to see you there. And yeah, that's it. Kyle, Jeff, Sean, any last words?
Can I add one extra thing in there? And all I want to say is that the tools don't necessarily create your outcomes. It's more of the operator and what they're going to decide the levers that they need to pull. You know your thresholds, you know what you're capable of and what you're able to accept. So just go in there, learn a little bit more, like Sean's saying, and make 2026 the best year possible.
I love it. That is the energy that we wanted to bring. Thank you, Kyle.
You're welcome.
And I will say, how many hundreds of thousands of businesses are in this space, right? Hundreds of thousands. And all of you who are in this webinar, you should be stoked, excited, because you're part of a very small group of people that continues education. I used to be in a very long relationship in Houston before I expanded my Airbnb business. And my ex-girlfriend was an administrator in long-term care. And every year she had to do hours and hours of continued education. Our space is not a space where people do that. So if you are here, you're part of a very small group of people that care about getting better at this. And you will crush 2026 if you keep up that type of discipline. So I want to congratulate you all for being here. You guys are the right people for the job.
100%. Yeah, couldn't agree more. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Have a good one.
Adios.
Bye.